look at this. Pam Bondi asked about the Epstein files. She said, the Epstein files are on my desk. I remember asking Donald Trump about this back in the summertime. I asked him if he was going to release all of these files. Do we have that video, guys? Americans have lost a lot of trust in institutions, and I think there's been a lot of discussion, especially online and especially with young people. How do we rebuild that trust in institutions? The CIA, the FBI, all those institutions.
You're right.
Some people think that one way to build trust is to declassify things that everyone's talking about. I know you talked earlier about, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. So if you were president, would you declassify, you can answer yes or no to these, would you declassify the 9/11 files?
Yeah.
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah. I did a lot of it.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world. But I think I would, or at least
Do you think that would restore trust? Help restore trust?
Yeah, I don't know about Epstein so much as I do the others. Certainly about the way he died. It would be interesting to find out what happened there because that was a weird situation and the cameras didn't happen to be working, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I'd go a long way toward that one.
Great questions.
Yeah, it's tough.
You press them, and now we've got Attorney General Pam Bondi talking yesterday about what she plans to do with these files now sitting on her desk. Here's what she says.
This is something Donald Trump has talked about. The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
Not yet.
That I think you spurned that to happen, and now Pam Bondi's being pretty specific that she's reviewing it, so that's not clear that we're getting all of it. But it's not just Epstein; it's Epstein, MLK, JFK, and all of these things.
Look, the Epstein stuff is serious stuff.
It is.
We're talking about children. We're talking about sexual abuse.
Absolutely. And remember, we're talking about a number of different potential crime scenes and videos that have been collected. One of the big differences, I think, now compared to the past 4 years is now there seems to be a real aggressive action toward transparency, as we've been talking about all morning long. I do want to know where those tapes went. I do want to know what happened out in New Mexico. I would like to know, are there other women and children who've been impacted, for example, by this Epstein, not just by Jeffrey Epstein himself, but also by Ghislaine Maxwell and by others who may or may not have been party to these circumstances on the east side of New York. So I think transparency, sunlight, what they say is the best disinfectant.
It's the best disinfectant. Let me tell you why I think this is important. I think it's important because we have a generation of young people who have been through the lies of COVID that deeply impacted them, have seen all of these things transpire that we've been talking about, but at very formative ages. And this is their chance to believe that their government is honest again.
Amen.
I think if these are not released in their entirety, and if this promise is not kept, and by the way, I believe President Trump is going to keep this promise, but I think this is about restoring trust for young people in democracy.
Yeah.
I think it's wildly important.
We've had these drones, and we've talked about here on the couch and elsewhere, these mysterious drones everywhere in the Biden administration. Stonewalled. Trump administration comes in right away. It's like, okay, here's what that was.
Yeah.
And but it's like, why was that so hard? And you have a great point, too, with young viewers. This is about the erosion of trust with young people and their government. And that's not a good thing. That needs to be reversed. And I think transparency, they can see tangible transparency when they're looking into whether it's Epstein or RFK or JFK. They're like, okay, now I can see it. Now I can see it for myself. I can read it. And therefore, you're reading sources.
There's a reason for government to have some secrets, but a lot of this is just about protecting powerful people. And this is a chance to reverse that. So,
all right.